I had already made a vow to myself that I was going to do anything that improved by even 1% my chances of staying sober. So, I made an intellectual decision. I'm going to start believing in God. And then I confronted, the universal dilemma, which is how do you start believing in something that you can't see or smell or touch or taste or hear or acquire with your senses? And and Jung answers that question. He says, fake it till you make it. Act as if that the compliance will precede the evidence. Then once you start complying and living like you're somebody who believes, pretending you believe, you'll actually start seeing evidence that will put that supposition beyond any reasonable doubt. So that's what I did. I just said, okay, I'm going to pretend there's a God up there, that he's looking at me the whole time, and that everything that I do is kind of a moral choice, has a moral dimension to it. And I began breaking and that I had to behave myself even when I didn't have an audience, and even when I didn't have eyewitnesses. So I started breaking my day down into about 40 different decisions, and each one has a moral implication. When the alarm goes off in the morning, do I get out of bed immediately, or do I lie in bed for another 15 minutes with my indolent thoughts? Do I hang up the towels when I go? Do I make my bed? That's the most important thing every day. Even when I'm staying at a hotel now, I make my bed, which is ridiculous. It's crazy to do that, but I do it because it's part of building character, which is what we're doing here. We're not here to build a pile for ourselves, and whoever dies with the most stuff wins. We're here to build character, which is the only thing that is enduring, that's durable, that will survive our own lives. And you do that by making the bed even when you don't need to, by doing the right thing even when somebody's not looking at you. So do I put the water in the ice tray before I put the ice tray back in the freezer? Do I, when I reach into my closet and I pull out a pair of blue jeans and all those little wire hangers fall on the floor of the closet, do I go in there and say, because what I used to do is say, hey, I got a lot to do today. I am too important for that job. That's somebody else's job. And I'd shut the closet door. And I left a lot of those closed closets all day long, for other people to do, right? And so now I go in there and I hang them all up, even if I'm in a rush. When do I put the shopping cart back where it's supposed to go? And I remember when I first got sober, my life had gotten very, very small, which is what happens. You get isolated, you get small from addiction. And when I got sober, my life started getting big very quickly. And I was running through National Airport, and I was late for a plane. It was mission critical. I don't even remember what it was, but the apocalypse was going to happen if I didn't make that plane. And I was late and was already going to miss it. And as I was running, I was putting a piece of dentine in my mouth, and I wrapped the wrapper up, and I was running, and I threw the wrapper into a garbage can and make a perfect arc right into the center swish of the can. But I noticed through the corner of my eye that it must have hit something in there and jumped back out. I was like, well, that's God's fault because I made the shot, right? So I come running. But then I got about 40 or 50 feet down that, down the terminal, and it just started eating at me. And I put on the brakes, and I went back and put that little piece of garbage back in the can. And I still made my plane. But the most important thing that day was, that I did was to do that. That little task is the most important thing I did on that day, because the whole challenge with life, and both sobriety, but also life, is how do we stay in that posture of surrender, of humility? How do we stay there even when the cash and prizes are flowing in and people are telling you how great you are? and you got everything going for you. And that's when I want to say to God, thank you, God, I got it from here, and take the wheel and drive the car off the cliff again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, gotta watch out for that one. How long did the spiritual awakening take? Like, how long were you in rehab for?
I had it from when I made that decision. I'll tell you what happened to me. I went out, I finished that book, and by the time I finished that book, I had made a decision. I'm going to turn my life over to God, okay, whatever that means, however I find Him. And so I made that decision. And then I close that book, and I go out, these rehabs, they have a lot of volleyball, and we went out to play volleyball. And during that volleyball game, a ball, somebody hit a ball on a very, very powerful punch. It went way up in the air, and then it came down and it hit the top of the post where the net was tied. And it started up again, and I said out loud, so everybody heard me, I said, that ball's going to get hit by a Mack truck. Oh, and the ball goes up again on this kind of errant flight. It lands right dead on the center of a chain link fence, and it topples over the other side onto a driveway, and it rolls down the grade about probably 40 or 50 feet into the middle of a thoroughfare. And a big 18-wheel diesel with a bulldog on the hood comes and pops, and it goes bang, a big resounding pop. And everybody there just looked at me and said, "How did you know that?" It was just a moment, but I was like, okay, this is, and I had just finished that book about synchronicity. So I said, I felt like, I was being tapped on the shoulder, and I said, I can either just say that was a coincidence and walk away, or I can see God in it, and I can be grateful and thankful and joyful, that I got to see it so soon. And now I see those things every day in my life. I rely on them. And as long as I stay in that posture of surrender, I have miracles in my life all the time. And it's like, my life before I figured this all out was all activity and no progress. I had a lot of ambition. I was like a big truck, that has headers and the pipes that are spitting fire and smoke, and the engine revving and the wheels spinning, stuck in a ditch going nowhere. But a lot of energy going into it and a lot of activity, getting stuff right to the end of the goal line and never getting across. And all of that. And now, when you connect to that higher vibrations, to that spiritual side, then it's almost like you can put down the oars and hoist the sails, and that you're being propelled. And it's like judo, because if you apply the effort toward your spiritual condition, then it pays off in all these other ways that just don't, in the reality that we live in, they don't seem connected, but they are. If you can stay in that high vibration, just good things happen.
So you get sober, and then you kind of...
Let me give you another metaphor, just one thing that just occurred to me. When I was a kid, sometimes I'd pick a flower, like a rose that was still in the bud, and then try to unfold it. And it never looks right. And a lot of times you have to just learn to be still. You do your job, which is watering the flower, but otherwise you leave it alone. And, I remember when I got out of the rehab, I read a line from Isaiah that said, "Be still and know that I am God." And that had a huge impact on me, of learning to be still is so much, because my life before was, including drugs, it's about, feeling discomfort and then having to fix it somehow. And, growing up is about learning to live with this discomfort and just experience it like dark clouds on the horizon, that it's going to come through, and that you just have to experience it and let it keep flowing, and there's nothing to do about it. and learning that, learning to be still, learning to be indifferent to pain, learning to be indifferent to pleasure, to desire. Those should be ultimately the ambition of an enlightened, of a spiritual enlightenment.